Well, good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folarin and I'm with Asukwo James
Good morning,
of
Mr. Yori.
TVC News.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Indeed. Okay. This morning I thought we'd look at, well, COVID-19 is still high season. We began a phase, sort of return to normalcy. That is a conversation on its own. But we're looking right now at the challenges of enforcing the COVID-19 border closures, state border closures. And it is thought that the security forces, most especially the police, they might be an issue here. And that's what we'll be talking about, because how is it that people are able to move up and down even though borders are reportedly closed? Although it's a totally different subject, some governors are taking draconian measures when it comes to obeying orders, obeying executive orders. They are looking at it, no doubt, from the ultimate perspective of this could be a matter of life and death, and people are not taking it, seriously enough. And I'm referring here to Governor Wike, who pulled down an hotel that infringed on an executive order not to open. But that's not the subject. It's how seriously are we taking other aspects of the fight against COVID-19, which, you can see in terms of everybody stay where you are, and if you can't stay where you are, don't travel from one state to the other. We have with us today Mr. Yemi Makwadirun. He's a governance and strategy expert. Thank you very much. And I use the opportunity to say good morning to you, Yemi.
Good morning to you, Mr. Folari. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, as always. Hope you had a great weekend. First of all, in a democracy, which is what we have, does that introduce special challenges? Excuse me. To the equation, talking about enforcing COVID-19 border regulations, which is people shall not move across borders apart from essential traffic.
Well, in fact, I very much appreciate the premise on which we are starting this discussion, because there are comparisons all over the world on the success or otherwise of lockdowns and compliance with government regulations, depending on whether that country is a democracy as we know it by Western standards, or whether it is a dictatorship or some autocratic governance. When this coronavirus broke out in China, it was much easier for the Chinese government, to enforce the lockdown, to enforce the no movement order, and to ensure that people comply with all the protocols that were put in place to stem the tide, of the virus. Now, flip over to the more democratic societies. You'll find people protesting, after a few days, a few weeks, about the lockdown and the rest of it. These are things you didn't hear in China. What is the difference? The difference is because you have an autocratic, government, in China that is that doesn't blink an eye when it has to apply, the big stick, and people already got used to it. So when they hear government regulations, they are more likely, to conform and comply. But over here, particularly in other climes like we have in Nigeria, we seem to have taken the liberty of democracy, to some extraneous levels that are counterproductive, to general welfare.
Okay, I tell you what, we have our reporters, up and down the land. We'll take a report from Enugu, and stay with us, please, because we'll come back to you later. We'll take a report from Enugu on, how, it's panning out there.
Enugu state government is conducting a routine checks to ascertain the level of adherence to its compliance order on the closure of boundaries with other states.
1 to 10 is not even allowed to be on duty. It is allowed. It's not. Let me show you the message. I disagree with that. I disagree.
Deputy Governor Cecilia Izino is at Uguoba, the boundary between Enugu and Anambra states. She demands professionalism among the security personnel in the area.
And I'm pleading that please do not allow any vehicle to pass here, either going to Anambra State or from Anambra State to Enugu. Let us maintain the inter-border lockdown so that we'll be able to minimize this virus.
The Deputy Governor also visited the boundary between Enugu and Ebonyi states, where she reiterates the importance of the routine exercise.
Vehicles don't transmit coronavirus. It's human beings. Vehicles are just asked not to pass because they are carrying human beings. So if you allow people to trek, you are not obeying the law.
It's a very serious assignment people are doing. But this is not about vehicle movement. It's about human movement. You don't want human beings to be crossed. That's it. You can even park your vehicle, but this is to involve human beings.
In compliance with the Nigerian Governors Forum's resolution requesting that member states should ensure that there is restriction of movement from one state to another, the Enugu State government is not losing sleep over this. It has taken it upon itself to ensure that compliance at the border level is total. Enugu may not have recorded more cases of coronavirus, but the state government is also stepping up efforts to stop the spread of the pandemic. Bandele Ajayi, TVC News, Enugu.
Okay, well, that's the Enugu situation. We have other reports, and we'll get to them in due course. And we still have Mr. Mapadero on Skype for us. But it's interesting the way it was put there that this is not vehicular traffic now. It's human traffic. So it would appear people don't want to be locked down. They are not persuaded by the facts, by the science. They just are being persuaded for how we've always been. And, you know, I don't want to be restricted.
Even when we had the lockdown initially, you know, people were still trying to force the government to allow them move out. And they were still going out. You know, and if you look at even in Lagos, because we are in Lagos, the Lagos situation is even worse because Lagos borders Ogun. And there is no point in Lagos that you don't have small spaces and roads that will lead to Ogun State. So, and look at what the Enugu state government and every other government, especially the one in Kaduna, the Kaduna state government has blocked all the roads leading to Kaduna, Katsina, and Kano, especially Kano, you know, because that is where they had their own index case from, you know. So they are trying to make sure that people do not, whether you want to walk in or you want to drive in, you are not coming in.
You're not going to be able to do it.
You know, so like Beggar, for instance, I know that there's a checkpoint there, a minor checkpoint, very minimal, but people will still walk into Lagos.
Indeed.
You know, and this is where the spread comes in. And when once you come into Lagos, you take it from Lagos, you are taking it back to Ogun State.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very worrisome.
Yemi, would you like to weigh in on this matter? As the official said, this is not transport. This is human waka traffic. And people will always find a way.
Well, undoubtedly, I would like to weigh in. I think it's a combination of the two. What normally happens is that people commute to the boundary of a state, they disembark, they walk across, and then continue their commuting, you know, via transport. That is what you see in all the boundary areas, you know, between states. Now, I also want to underscore the fact that the enforcement actually needs, you know, to be taken a notch higher. Because what I observe and what I have heard from reports is that rather than enforce the lockdown or enforce the curfew as the case may be, you find security operatives turning the situation into an economic situation. In other words, a money-making venture. And so, rather than pursue it, or dissuade the people from coming out, the people just come out believing that once they are able to part, with some amount, they will cross from one state to the other, and we'll be seeing it all over. I mean, you find commercial vehicles or trucks, that commence their journeys, from some parts of the north, for instance, being apprehended in Osun State, being apprehended in Ogun State, after crisscrossing, 12, 13, 14 states. So you want to ask yourself, despite the humongous number of checkpoints that we have dotting the landscape of Nigeria, how come that this high volume of vehicular traffic are still able to crisscross the length and breadth of the country? I understand that there is not a total lockdown. I mean, vehicles moving petroleum products, vehicles moving, food items, and the rest of them are allowed to move, and those on essential duties. But the people I see, from moving from one point to the other, are not for people on essential duties.
Yemi, I beg your pardon. Let's pick it up from there. I've got to go on a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. COVID-19 border closures, emergency measure. People don't like it, are not abiding by it, and usually when there's a regulation or a law, you have security people to enforce or some sort of enforcement. But reportedly, the very security folks that would have done this have turned the whole system into something of a mega plaza labyrinth and network where allegedly you part with a toll, you gain access. And this is defeating the whole purpose, defeating whatever gains have been made. People just don't seem to be convinced that COVID-19 affects them individually. It's something you read about in the papers, hear about on the radio, on TV, but it doesn't really affect them. And so they're willing to do anything to, well, not comply with the order. They have to go about their business, whatever that business is. Some for social affairs. Some they've got a wedding to attend. Some they've got a burial to attend. People just don't want to be restricted. Okay, let's cross over to Ondo and see and hear from Arakunrin Rotimi Akeredolu, the governor there, on this subject.
This briefing is coming a day after Governor Rotimi Akeredolu announced 3 new cases of COVID-19 in the state. The briefing gave the governor opportunity to address key issues suspected to be responsible for rising cases of the virus in the state. He laments the porous nature of the state borders, with particular reference to the 4th and 5th cases who are policemen. The governor said heads of security agencies must brace up.
It is clear to us that our borders are still porous and heavily compromised. 2, our security agents who are to enforce government restriction order are themselves accomplices who abuse the trust placed in them at this critical time. I'm making reference to those 2 policemen who came in from Lagos. Police chiefs of Nigeria Armed Forces, as well as the authorities of other security agencies, to streamline and monitor the movement and operation of men and officers at this time.
State Commissioner of Police Ondi Adi, who spoke on behalf of other security agencies, gave reasons why some people still get entry to the state through the borders.
While we are going on, we discovered that there are some track roads that desperate Nigerians who want to move interstate still try to move across.
State Commissioner for Health also shed more light on the whereabouts of one of the suspects who allegedly killed Olufunke Olakuri, daughter of Alfenfere leader Ruben Fashoroti.
It's still in the prison because we have made an arrangement with the prison authorities to keep him in a single room there, and people will come around to take care of him.
So it's not at the isolation center?
No, it's not.
The governor also advised the people to stay at home and obey precautionary measures aimed at preventing the spread of the disease in the state. Ayodeji Moradeyo, TVC News, Akure.
Okay, so there was Governor Akeredolu putting it quite blandly. The very security personnel, Yemi Makwadenu, who is still with us on Skype, he made the point, although he made it more delicately. But
was so mild.
Yeah, Yemi was quite delicate. He was diplomatic with the point. But well, there's Governor Akeredolu putting it blandly. He started out a bit discreetly himself, talking about heavily compromised. I think the next sentence then explained the matter, that the very police, and using that as background myself, I remembered Yemi said they accept tolls, or people are ready to give them tolls. So this should be of concern to the top policeman, the Inspector General of Police, because it really does cast, it doesn't reflect on him very well. What kind of a police force do you have, sir? Probably is the question. Is that a legitimate question for Mr. Inspector General of Police, Yemi?
Well, I think that would be a bit rhetorical, because the truth of the matter is that, those personnel of the police and other, enforcement, security agencies, came out from the rest of us. I mean, it just depicts who we are. We are willing to latch on to any opportunity to line our pockets.
But the argument, Yemi, would be that those are disciplined forces, and that when you go, you are subjected, or you sign up for a much higher level of discipline than those of us from which you came.
But don't forget that by the time you get to 18 years, to join the police, the army, the air force, the navy, the civil defense, and the rest of it, your character is already made. You're already molded, and so it's a reflection, of our degraded values. I mean, we have diminished ourselves as human beings in this country to the extent that I submitted somewhere that those who oppress us today were once part of the oppressed, and that those who are being oppressed today will turn out to be greater oppressors tomorrow. So it has nothing to do with the individuals that are carrying the gun, creating tolls and making money. I understand that between Asaba and Lagos, conservatively, you have about 30 checkpoints where security forces collect between 500 naira and 1,000 naira. I repeat, between 500 naira and 1,000 naira for vehicles, to pass. And I ask myself, if we have constituted, ourselves to this nuisance, to a great nuisance to ourselves, why not just totally, unlock the country so that you don't have this mercantilistic, attitude that prevails everywhere,
but the bottom
in the country.
Yemi, it goes back to the point of all of this, COVID-19 and the great danger it poses, and the flippant way with which our people are handling it. We started on the democratic premise that in a democratic country, is it more difficult to do that which is right? Because if people are not going to appreciate that doing what they are doing is endangering our lives, what does one do?
Mr. Folari, I believe in democracy because democracy allows the individual, to optimize their freedom. It allows for creativity. It allows for innovation. It frees the mind to do that which will bring maximum, fulfillment to the individual. But I am also conscious of the fact that democracy emphasizes freedom. And as a development expert, as a strategy and governance expert, I know very well that democracy really does not bring development. It is development that enhances democracy. And I can give you just 3 instances: Singapore, China, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These are not democracies, but going forward, the more developed they become, the more freedom they grant, to their people. Let's go back to the United States of America, which is the reference point, for Western democracy. As recently as in the 60s, women and blacks were not voting. They didn't have universal adult suffrage. So the more they developed, the more they opened the space. But because we copy our democracy hook, line, and sinker from the West, we think everything that works in the West will work in Nigeria and or in developing countries. And we have been inundated with so many cliches, making democracy look like at the end of everything. But the truth and reality is that yes, we can have democracy, but that's with democracy of freedom, with responsibility. And that is why there is a new school, in political science, which is called political engineering. Political engineering, teaches that you cannot supplant a system in one country, and implant it in another country without looking, at the peculiarity of the environment.
Indeed. Yemi, I beg your pardon. I'm going to have to interrupt again. Yet another commercial break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. And we also, as soon as we come back, we have Mr. Tony Ofoyeta on the phone, and we'll be bringing him into the conversation as well. Stay with us. Okay, welcome back. We're looking at the challenges of enforcing the border closures as something in the arsenal of the fight against the dreaded virus, COVID-19. Observers, know that they've seen that this is not working. This is not the intended effect, not to mention experts, not to mention medical people and epidemiologists and all of those. They know that what is going on is a virtual time bomb. But we have this situation on our hands. I don't know. Nobody wants to use the word draconian, but it looks like because nobody wants to deploy draconian measures, you can't even do that within a system of rule of law and democracy. People are therefore, very much trying to continue as they always had. In other words, business as usual. Now, Mr. Tony Ofoyeta, he's a security consultant. He's also a legal practitioner. He's on the phone. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Mr. Oyori.
Okay, the challenge we have here, what can we do? Are we just going to come on television and be talking about it, and then people will be dying because that's what the experts say will happen if we let this thing, the containment of it, if we let it get beyond us? It's just going to be a fatal situation. So we look like we're in a desperate situation here.
Well, for me, if I have to look at it, balancing it up with the medical and security, we had serious security challenges during the lockdown where the so-called 1 million boys terrorized almost every part of the southwest and even the southeast. The north also had a good share of their own security challenges. And the argument is always that hunger will kill faster than coronavirus. And that also was one of the reasons why the government had to look at the possibility of easing the lockdown. Now, so far so well. If you ask me personally, I may not be in the forefront of the medical team, but so far I think in terms of nose masks, Lagos State has done relatively well. In terms of going to organizations, individual places and the like, you see them, the culture of washing hands has also gone a little bit higher than expected. The major challenges in the area of social distancing, especially in commercial vehicles. And one of the reasons is because there are not enough commercial vehicles. This against the number of people that are on the street.
Yeah, but
and
Tony,
going by the fact that
can I interject here?
Number of people that can be carried.
Let me come in a bit, Tony. Thank you very much for those observations. Yes, these are general anti-COVID-19 measures, but we're zeroing in particular on the matter of border controls, people trying to contain people within geographic regions so that you don't carry it and then go and infect people that don't have it already. So that is the challenge that we're addressing specifically.
Well, that challenge, it is the security agencies that are indictable. They're unpardonably indictable in this. And I'm not apologetic about the choice of words. Because you imagine if a truck leaves a place like Kano to Ondo to Lagos, and you have human beings in, and you have avalanche of checkpoints on the road, and they were able to still make it this far from the north to the south, that means that they didn't fly, they are not spirit. They must have met different security agencies. Like the analyst, in the studio did say, I love his analysis. It's so awesome. Look, these are people that are busy making money for themselves. And as far as they are concerned, the issue is, are they even convinced themselves that there is COVID-19?
This is the challenge.
Do they have that serious conviction in them? Because collecting money, for example, from somebody you don't know if he's infected or not, and you collect it, put it in your pocket, and you allow them to go. You don't even know their health status. And the instruction from federal government is that everybody stay within your state as it were. For me, it is the security apparatus on the road that are indictable, as far as I'm concerned. And if any of the security agencies will want to come and refute that, I think it's going to be a very big challenge for them.
Yeah.
A very big one.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, the government should really look inward. If we have a good system, all you need to do is talk about a ticket. You're on the road. You are not supposed to be road because you are not of essential service. Your plate number is taken. A ticket is issued to you. If it's 50,000, if it's 10,000 naira, you go and pay it. When you are issued 1-2 tickets, nobody will tell you to stay at home.
Hopefully. I wanted to say hopefully.
Because they have good statistics. It's easy to penalize anybody.
I hear what you're saying, Tony. But where there are penalties, that's even making it even more marketable for these kind of people, these kind of security people. Because if, as you said, it is a 50 naira fine, when you're accosted, given the ongoing previous or ongoing behavior, do you want to pay a 50 naira ticket, or are you going to put 10 in my pocket here and I'll let you continue?
What the government is just have mobile courts in strategic places. It should not be the responsibility of the police. I agree that no matter the policy, our policemen, they know how to actually bypass it for their own gain, especially those that are on the road. There are good police officers, no doubt about many of them. Fine police officers all over the country, but those that they put on the road, they are in short, they are image destroyers for the police.
And why are the police putting those ones on the road? Why isn't this being taken as an emergency operation and you put incorruptible officers on the road instead? That's the question.
Well, but the question is incorruptible and corruptibility is not something you write on the forehead. Those that deploy them there, deploy them with the innocency of their mind, that they should go there and do their professional duties. But of course, knowing full well that there is already a vulnerability, which they are ready to exploit for the advantage of their pockets, what do you see them do? You see them compromising. That's why I ask, do they truly believe in COVID-19? Do they truly believe that this virus truly operates? If they do, they will protect themselves. They won't run away from the money.
Exactly.
And they will be so strict about it.
Yemi Makpadenu is still on the other channel.
They are not very convinced.
Okay.
They're just doing it for doing sake.
Very, very good. I still have Yemi Makpadenu on the other channel. Now, Yemi, okay. So what do we do? Do we just keep on talking about it on radio, television, write about it so we know what the problem is? There doesn't seem to be any hope of a solution to the problem. What we seem to be saying is that, look, this is the way we are. You can't expect anything different.
Well, first and foremost, let me say that it is very difficult to actually curb human and vehicular movement 100%. But what we have in our country now is that we are observing, laws and orders, in the breach. So the rule has become the exception, and then the exception has become the rule. And when you have a situation like this, it means you have an emergency at hand.
So we go back to the point you made earlier. Sorry, does democracy have a part to play in the situation we have on our hands? The fact that people can't behave anyhow.
Yes, I want to land, on that thought, which is that short of saying that the roadblocks should be dismantled and people should be allowed unfettered movement, I would suggest that because the aviation industry is a more controlled industry, right? If there is going to be any kind of movement at all, then let it be via aviation. In other words, via air transportation. Now, I know somebody will say that is elitist, but then if you don't have any reason to move, why do you pay 25,000 naira, to embark on a tortuous journey of 12 hours, in some cases overnight, which is about the average cost of a 1-hour flight, in Nigeria? That is number one. Number two is that very senior security personnel should be deployed to every checkpoint. I mean, the senior security personnel don't pose so much of a problem when it comes to enforcing, discipline on the road. And once they are there, the rank and file will take their bearing and ensure that the right thing is done. I don't want to create any dichotomy on air now, but I am of the view that there are certain personnel of some security organizations in Nigeria that are more prone to being compromised than the others. I'm not here to mention names. Basically, because of the level of disciplinary procedure, that applies, in those institutions. And I think so. Number two, going forward, is that senior security personnel should also be on patrol, if not stationary at those points, to ensure that the impunity that is going on our roads, is curtailed, if not totally removed. It is actually embarrassing. And like Tony said, it is a very bad public relations, for our uniformed personnel.
Okay. Okay, Tony.
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. This last question for you. You just heard Yemi's suggestion in relation to my sort of exasperated question about what we're going to do. Just roll over and die because this is how we are. This is what our people are going to keep on disappointing us. Yemi just suggested, look, find a way to bring senior police officers into the game plan.
Well, It's a good idea, but the issue is whether we have enough senior police officers to do the job as it were. That's one area we must look at. I agree with him because senior police officers, senior security officers are more humane, more understanding. They understand, and they could also be better in terms of enforcement of the law.
And they are arguably not as desperate. And also arguably not as desperate.
Yes, but basically I think the government should also look at areas where they can convince the people without necessarily the issuance of threats that, we'll close down, we'll lock down. If government can convince the people on the necessity to sit down at home, or alternatively, see how we can look inward to develop a curative cure.
All right.
There are other countries that are looking inward, but we are busy waiting for the vaccine.
Yes.
I don't think it is a right approach. Government should really put its house in order. There are tradomedical organizations that said that they are ready to help the government. Government should look into those areas and not wait for the white man to come and give us a vaccine and bring heavy bill that we may not be able to pay in the next 10, 20 years.
I want to thank you very much, Tony. Thank you very much, Mr. Tony Ofoyetan, security consultant, for indeed sharing your perspectives with us on this subject. Thank you very much, Tony, this early morning, giving us some time out of your busy schedule. Okay, so that was Mr. Tony Ofoyetan there, and Yemi Makwadino is still on the other line with us, which is really the Skype channel. But we'll take another break, and then we'll come back, and of course we'll also be able to take your calls from home. Stay with us, please.
President Buhari had weeks ago stopped interstate travels. This was to curtail community transmission of coronavirus in the country. Now the governor is on tour of some borders with some senior members of his cabinet and commissioner of police. They visited the Niger Bridge, which borders Anambra State. The task force and security operatives are on ground to ensure that only vehicles on essential duties are given access. The team then stopped over at another boundary with Edo State, Alifikede. With Delta State having a lot of borders with neighbors Edo, Anambra, and Bayelsa State, it is quite difficult for security operatives to ensure that the borders are not porous. Governor Kowa is mindful of the enormous work involved in securing these borders.
I've seen that a lot of work is being done by the task force that has been set in these two places. It's very tasking, but I know that it is something worthwhile. The reason behind the interstate lockdown is that we want to limit the number of persons who are moving across states, so that we try as much as possible to limit the spread.
He is also concerned about the concealment of people inside vehicles carrying food items.
The criminal elements among the drivers of the trailers and lorries tend to carry some of these people along with their so-called goods. I'm aware that there are no Amajiris from Delta State or from any of the states in the South-South or the Southeast. So it's unfortunate that some of them are beating the agreed protocol between the states in the north, and then they are being moved to the south. All we have to do is to stay careful. Any of those vehicles that they see carrying more than what people would generally call the motorboy and the driver, they should be turned back.
The governor also reiterated the call on residents to practice physical distancing, wear face masks, and wash their hands with running water and soap. He also commended individual and organization for donating items like face masks, personal protective equipment, and food items to assist in the fight against COVID-19. Ikenna Amechi, TVC News, Asaba.
Thanks to Ikenna there. And, well, that was the final report today. There are many, many more, of course, but we are constrained by time. And we're looking at the challenges of maintaining those borders. Look, if the people had decided amongst themselves, within themselves, that I'm not going to go out because I don't want to catch COVID-19, there's nothing the government could do to bring them out. They will be finding ways to dodge that government regulation that said they should come out. But people's mind is the other way.
Exactly.
I need to go out. Good morning, Mr. Joshua. Thank you for calling in.
Okay. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And I hope you're safe as well.
Quickly, when there's a systemic failure, Uncle Yori, you don't exonerate the leadership in that system. I don't subscribe to the fact that they are fine officers. It is only their men on the road that are corrupt. It's a systemic failure. We should understand that. The police guy on the road collecting 1,000 and all that is making returns to people in the office. They should cleanse the system. That is the point. And then this lockdown, the attitude of some governors seems to be like they are using it to punish people. I don't see them looking at it as a preventive thing because they are not taking actions. We are locked down, and then some of us are complying while others are not complying. But let me tell you, as we are locked down now, almost 2 months in Ogun State, I have not seen the state government fumigate anywhere. I have not seen their action. It's just about, I regulate this, I lock you down, I lock you down. Why are you locking down some people and opening up others when you can see them? And I want to ask about the Ogun State-Lagos border. These two states are the same. Why are you differentiating Ogun State from Lagos? Federal government locked down Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja. Why is the governor of Ogun now making another statement against Lagos State governor? These two states are the same.
All right, then. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. Joshua. I really appreciate your call and the points you make.
I think he made a very valid point. If you are locking down, you have to bring out a strategy or tell people this is why I'm locking down. I'm locking down because in the next couple of months or next couple of weeks, we want to start fumigating, want to ramp up testing, then you can go to so place and so place for you to get tested. But not that you lock down people and then you are not doing anything. And that is, it defeats the whole purpose, you know. And from all the things that our guests have been saying, I think the Minister for Interior will have to come out because the police force is under the Minister of Interior. So it means the PTF today we will need to see Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola coming out with his own strategy on how to stop interstate travel. Because people are also tired of, somebody is coming, Almajiris are coming from one particular location to the other. And just like we are saying behind, so many people are not enlightened enough to know that COVID can actually kill people. You know, so enlightenment, which this now falls on the laps of the information,
they know
Minister of Information.
They know it can kill. They also know that we're fighting, but they think it is only someone else, not me here.
See, the thing is, that is where the enlightenment comes, that you can get infected and get killed and also kill others, including your family members. I think we have to also emphasize that, don't forget, including your family member, except you don't love your family.
You see, don't forget that there are even religious leaders that are speaking against the situation.
Talking about religious leaders,
yes.
There's a particular
So, I mean, when you're looking for informed people,
in quotes, that have been, disputing all the effort and making that all the effort that government is making, does not come to anything. Till today, the government has not taken it upon itself to bring that man of God to prosecute him.
Okay,
these are some of the things that people want to see. Because if there's no prosecution, people will not take it seriously.
We've mentioned the police, copiously this morning, and so I'm very happy that we have Mr. Frank Mba, the Force, Public Relation Officer. Good morning, Mr. Mba.
Yes, good morning, my brother.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you've heard. I'm happy. You must have been watching our program, or someone called you to the program. Your men, that is men of the Nigeria Police, force. Is it force or service?
You will tell us.
Men of the Nigerian Police are actually the weak link in this security chain because they are letting people through and allegedly have turned the whole country into a complex of toll plazas?
First of all, let me thank you for getting me onto the program. But I think I will start by correcting some errors and by correcting some erroneous assumptions. Number one, let me start by noting very respectfully to your colleagues in the studio that the police is not under the Minister of Interior or under the Ministry of Interior. There is a full-fledged Ministry of Police Affairs which superintends or supervises policing activities in this country. It is under a full-fledged minister in charge of police affairs.
Thank you.
Then secondly, I also want to note very respectfully that it will be quite uncharitable for anyone to describe the police and other security agencies as a weak link in efforts to contain and curtail the spread of COVID-19 in this country. As a matter of fact, we are part of the frontline forces that have been working day and night to keep our country safe, and also we have also taken the added responsibility, a very onerous and very risky one at that matter, to also try to keep our countrymen away from conditions and situations that will aid the transmission of these diseases onto our citizens. We from the outset of the lockdown, we have been charged with the responsibility of ensuring that this lockdown are implemented. We've been the one making sure that the roads are safe. We've been the one keeping people away from the churches, from the mosques, from the nightclubs, from the beaches, from the football clubs. And in doing this, we have also suffered a lot of bodily harm. Children have been burnt. Policemen have been attacked and physically wounded. I'm sure you watched a viral video recently when a woman slapped a policeman 13 good times and the policeman never responded. So I think very respectfully, it will be unfair to these men and women who are putting their lives and the lives of their family on the line every day to say we are the weak link. The challenge here is the fact that we are expected to police interstate boundaries. Policing interstate boundaries is much more difficult than policing the external boundaries of a country. If you were in this country and you remember recently when the president locked down our external boundaries with our neighboring countries, it was easier, much easier for the customs working with other law enforcement agencies to adequately enforce those lockdown on those external boundaries. But when you are called to impose restrictions within your own internal boundaries, where kids and kin live side by side, and sometimes the boundary between one state and the other is very fluid, you are faced with enormous challenges. And expectedly, in policing this country, especially at this very trying period, police officers are also called upon to be tactful, to be compassionate, and to respect the fundamental rights of the citizens.
You know, Mr. Mba, I've got to interrupt here. Mr. Mba, Mr. Frank Mba, I want to thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank you profusely for coming on. In fact, I let you speak without interrupting because of the time. And now we've run out of time, and so we won't be able to continue. But I want to thank you for coming on and giving it to us from the police perspective. I also want to thank you, Mr. Yemi Makpadirun, on Skype. We're going to have to leave it here. It's not the most satisfactory because Mr. Mba, we'll probably get him again. There are other questions that we would have liked to ask him, and I'm sure that Mr. Mba will oblige us. But for today's program, we thought it was fairest in the context to let Mr. Mba speak without interruption. Thank you very much, Mr. Frank Mba, Force spokesperson. Thank you very much, Yemi. Thank you very much, Mr. Ofoyeton. And indeed, thank you for the, that was the guy from Ogun, Mr. Joshua. Thank you very much. Tomorrow, maybe we'll be able to get more time to get more calls in. That's our program today. On behalf of Asukwa James and I, do keep being safe. See you tomorrow.